This show is made possible by viewers like you due to YouTube wage theft. Your donations and Patreon subscriptions are the only thing keeping this channel alive. If you would like and are able to send a one-time donation via PayPal or join my Patreon, both of those links are down below and will be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you all to all who have supported and all who will support. Your donations secure the future of this channel. Did you enjoy your week off? Well, now the Browns are back. And we are here, and honestly, with some good news. The Browns look to, for the first time all season, be relatively healthy. Nick Chubb could return. Austin Hooper could return. Wyatt Teller could return. They're back at practice, in some cases almost off the injury report. And then you got guys like Jarvis, Kareem Hunt, and Baker Mayfield who have been on the injury report, been banged up, who are finally off that injury report or back to practicing full in the middle of the week. And this week, they play at home against a 2-6 Houston team that recently fired their head coach. But is that record and situation deceiving? Is this a tougher game than we think it's going to be for the Cleveland Browns? Well, let's talk about it. Before I get into that, I want to take this quick second here to thank all of the people who have joined the Dog Check tier on Patreon, and that starts with Michael Matique, Greg Ehlers, Seth Harrison, Corporal Nick Lopez, Nick Nasty, Tim McClure, Keith Anderson, Joshua Still, Sean Barron, Christopher G, Dom Gazzulo, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Dan in West Texas, Billy, Michael Hododnak, Jaret Austin, Robert Gentry, Patrick F. Austin, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, ITRex, Austin Bolen, Jesus Serrano, Chris Fulms, Picktown Browns backers, Mark Kahn, and Max Owl Dojo. Shout out to y'all. Thank you guys for joining that tier. It really is a lifesaver for this channel. And also, Dog Check. This matchup, in my opinion, is going to be very similar to the matchups that the Cleveland Browns have had so far against the Cincinnati Bengals. Those two teams, I think, share a lot of similarities, mainly surrounding the quarterback position. The Texans have a great quarterback with an offensive line that can be good at times, but also can be very shaky at others. The same thing was similar with the Cincinnati Bengals, even though their offensive line is definitely much worse than the Texans. I definitely think there are some areas of this defense, much like Joe Burrow has all year, that the Texans are definitely going to be able to exploit. But I also think the Browns are primed to attack some of the key weaknesses that the Houston Texans have on defense. So that being said, let's talk about the first matchup, the first point of concern, and that's going to be the number one thing that you need to know about Houston coming into this game is that Houston has struggled to stop the run all season, full stop, but they've also struggled especially bad against play action, zone run heavy teams. They rank overall 28th in DVOA, 23 in Pro Football Focus, and when they play to run heavy, zone run, you know, kind of what the Browns do, the Shanahan type system, they have not fared well at all. They played 2 games, one against Tennessee and one against Minnesota, and in those 2 games they gave up 425 yards, 5 touchdowns on 67 attempts for 6.34 yards per carry. Again, that's in 2 games. They actually do a decent job as a defense not being fooled on play action initially. So this isn't going to be like playing one of those really aggressive defenses like a Dallas where you're able to just get them right there off the play action. I think it's going to take a little bit more finessing than that. But let's not mince words here. This Houston Texans defense has some fatal flaws when it comes down to it. One of them is Carlos Watkins and Brandon Dunn, just not the DJ Reader replacement they thought they would be on the interior. They're not run stuffers. They're not impact players. They're not really impactful down there. JJ Watt's still good. He's not like the best player in the NFL, Aaron Donald level anymore, but he's still really, really good. It's just he has no help on any point in that front seven. They also have Bradley Roby and a good safety in Justin Reed. But outside of that, it's just bad. Their linebackers don't cover particularly well. Their defensive back room is not deep. They don't tackle well, which becomes a huge problem when it comes to stopping the run. And the Texans defense does this weird thing when you watch them where they fluctuate wildly from either being extremely conservative and late to react and kind of just trying to keep things in front of them as much as possible, as if they're playing a prevent defense almost. And sometimes they'll do that. And then other times, like randomly, they'll jump to being the extreme opposite of the spectrum where they're trying to be way more aggressive and getting caught up in some play actions. And there was a big run by Derrick Henry when they played Tennessee where you saw this kind of come for fruition where they just bit hard on the right side there and Derrick Henry just did a cutback and then just went off for like 40 yards there. And that's pretty much what that Texans run defense is overall. And what that defense is going up against is a uphill battle. I mean, the Browns at minimum are going to have Kareem Hunt. They might have Nick Chubb back. They probably are going to have Wyatt Teller back. So at worst, you're talking about having one of your best, two run offense players back in Wyatt Teller. You might have the whole lot back if you get Nick Chubb, who's practiced so far this week. It's just not confirmed whether he's going to play or not. So that's going to be interesting to see, because if Nick Chubb is back and Wyatt Teller is back, that could be a huge problem for Houston. They're not a great run-stopping team to begin with. They're really vulnerable against the zone run. And if you have your two best zone run pieces in Nick Chubb and Wyatt Teller back, that's not going to be great for Houston. And even if they don't get any of those guys back, the Browns still have the number 2 ranked run blocking offensive line per PFF. The one thing that has gone down is their run grade. It was number 1 for a while when Nick Chubb was healthy. It's dropped all the way to number 5. So you're talking about, for the Texans, at worst, going up against a run offense that is probably like 2 and 5 in those respective categories, or top at both of those categories. So not going to be a great thing to prepare for if you're the Houston Texans, and that definitely should be what the Browns rely on offensively, is this run game. Whether you have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, whoever you have out there, you need to trust it, and you need to trust that you're going to be able to use it to its max ability. And, best case scenario, the Browns get healthier across the board and healthier in a position that is an extreme weakness for Houston at this point. So all signs point positive for Cleveland in that area. Let's talk about another area of the Browns offense. That's going to be Houston's defense. Is kind of similar in both design and in weakness when it comes to structure as Cleveland's is. Both have some solid defensive backs at the top, but they have major depth issues everywhere else in the secondary. Both run a zone heavy and pretty vanilla, and that's shocking coming from a Romeo Crennel coach team, but it's a very vanilla 4-2-5 that they run out there. And both of those secondaries have been plagued by discipline and lack of communication. For the Browns, I think this is going to be relatively simple. If the Browns offensive line, which has been the number 1 offensive line when it comes to pass blocking in the NFL by a large margin according to PFF, if they can give Baker Mayfield time, but more importantly, if Baker Mayfield stays in the pocket and believes he has time like he has the last 2 games that he played in, then I think good things are going to happen for this team. The issue with Houston's coverage defense and why they're ranked 25th in the NFL this year is that they're not very disciplined. They do a similar thing to what the Indianapolis Colts do, where they kind of play soft and let you catch the ball up front and they try to tackle. But the difference is that Indy's good at tackling, Houston's not. Also, Indy is much more disciplined and aware with each of their defensive backs, and Houston just is not. Yes, this is going to be similar to Indy, where you're not going to be able to get a ton of yards off of play action boots because they're not going to bite instinctively like other teams would. That's going to open up a ton of things. But unlike Indy, they are a team that if you stay in the pocket for a half a second longer, that you can dice up because they're not very good at protecting the gaps in between their zones, because these players that they have just aren't really that great at communication and awareness to be able to rotate these things effectively. I can't show the clip here for copyright reasons, but if you go back and watch the Tennessee game that Houston played against them, you'll see Ryan Tannehill staying in the pocket and finding guys running across that zone quite often. It's how he scored like about 2 of his touchdowns against them. It's very effective. It's something that Jarvis Landry really excels at. So I think Baker and Jarvis might have a big game if they stick to this. That's what you have to do with Houston. Houston's going to let you vacate into some of these empty spots in the zone, and they're not going to be able to recover fast enough to get there. It's just up to the quarterback to be patient enough to let that play happen. And that's something that Baker Mayfield's going to have to do this week. Can he do it? I've seen him do it before, but I haven't seen him do it consistently. So the book's still out on Baker. And on the positive end, the last 2 games of the season that Baker played in, that's exactly what he started to do a lot more often, and which is why his quarterback play, especially when you look at it from PFF grades, had made that jump from like 50 and 40s consistently to 90 and like 70. Also, another thing that Baker Mayfield's going to be able to hit on, if you look at these pass charts I'm going to put up, Ryan Tannehill and Kirk Cousins were able to attack successfully along the sidelines. That's exactly where Baker Mayfield loves to attack this year. So those things are all lining up for success for Baker. This looks like a very good matchup for the Browns offense versus this Houston defense this week. Now that we've talked about how well the Browns match up offensively against this defense, let's talk about the other side. How does this defense match up with the offense, vice versa? Well, let's get to it. All right, so I think it's obvious at this point. I said that this Houston team reminds me a lot of Cincinnati. They have a little bit better of an offensive line where Cincinnati doesn't, but Cincinnati also has better wide receivers, much better wide receivers than anything Houston has. Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow, I think, are very similar quarterbacks. I don't know why more people haven't hit on this, but I think they're very similarly athletic in the way that they're not guys who are going to kill you off a ton of read option, but they are guys who can make things happen if you vacate or if you run a ton of man and leave the middle of the field open. We've seen this with Joe Burrow, where he's fast enough to take advantage of those things and agile enough to do that. Also, both of these guys aren't going to be the best deep ball throwers in the NFL, aren't going to have the strongest arms in the NFL, but they are really good at that short to intermediate part of the field. They attack that with precision, and I would expect nothing less from Deshaun Watson. Another thing that these two quarterbacks have in common is that they do have a propensity to hang on to the ball too much, which leads to them getting hit and sacked a lot. All that being said, I think Deshaun Watson's going to have very similar results against his defense that Joe Burrow has had, in me saying that he's going to be able to move the ball. That's just going to be a reality. This has a much higher probability of being a shootout than a blowout, which is fine. I think the Browns could win a shootout, but that's just what it's going to be. I don't see any reason why the Browns defense would be significantly better than they have been against a team like Cincinnati this week. They could come out and surprise me. Larry Ogunjobi can get back to form. The front four can get pressure, and that could really be a difference maker in this game. But again, the last 2 weeks, we haven't seen any pressure from the front four. We haven't seen any great jump in the secondary. So there's no reason for me to believe there's going to be anything significant when it comes to change happening for this defense. So if you're the Cleveland Browns, you just got to expect what happened last week to happen. I don't really have any great suggestions for them because it isn't anything they can do scheme-wise that's going to fix it. It's really just up to the players performing. And if that's going to be the case, I'm going to bet on Deshaun Watson to have a good game. But all that being said, I think the Browns are going to win this game. I think they have a great chance to do it. I think their strengths on offense give them enough in the edge that they'll be able to dominate time of possession, that they'll be able to limit the time that Deshaun Watson's able to have the ball. Maybe they could force a 3-and-out here or there. Maybe they could force a turnover. Maybe Myles Garrett can get you a stop or two. That's going to be the difference. But I just don't see the Houston Texans defense being able to stop the run against a Browns offense that has been that good. But that's that's just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day and have a good night.